Welcome to the Bible Breakdown. It's a black man and woman in America who no longer identify as believers. This show contains adult languages, themes, and isn't meant for children. As black people, we respect the history of the black church in America, but its current state is massively abusive, and we think the Bible might be part of the problem. Listen and let us know what you think. Peace. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Bible Breakdown. I'm your host, Kat.
And I am TK.
Hello, TK.
Hello. Good morning.
Are you ready to get into the word today?
Yes. Let's do it.
All right. I do want to say, this will definitely air after Thanksgiving, but I think it's always a good idea to have an attitude of gratitude. So I want to say I'm thankful to everyone listening right now, and I'm thankful to you for making time for our important work.
Yes, I agree.
So last time, do you remember what happened on the last exciting episode of the Bible Breakdown?
Abner defected David. Abner was finally made king. David was finally anointed king. And David mourned Saul. Yeah,
so David distinctively was anointed the king of Judah and not Israel. So right now we've got the Hebrews in two different kingdoms. And I think the word kingdom is a rather large word for what was really going on, which is just a tribe of warring warlords.
And you said this does have relation to the modern thing with the Israel-Palestine situation?
I mean, this is what it has its roots in.
Okay. I watched a video about that yesterday. That's what I was asking.
Got you. I think it's very important to get as much information about it as possible because it affects our world in an outsized way because of the Bible, which I like to remind people isn't a magic document. It's just a really old one. So, and it just happens to be the first book that got widely printed, but that doesn't make it magic. It just makes it first.
Yeah, my interest came from, obviously the situation has been going on for a while. I hope they find an expedient resolution that helps everyone. But I saw a tweet about how if rainwater, you can't Palestinians can't collect rainwater because it's the property of the Israeli government.
Yeah,
and I was that's fucking crazy.
Yeah, that goes too far. You know what perspective I feel I don't hear enough about the conflict is that neither side is a big fan of female leadership. They're both organizations that are very male dominated, and I'm not saying women should totally take over, but I think organizations are better when there's a diversity. Yeah, in all types of diversity. But, gender being one of the, parts of it. But that's just my humble opinion. I'm just a humble podcaster.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we have to have more diversity in leadership. I think when that happens, when women have, in more important roles, it's easier for men to then follow them,
It's also interesting to me, too, that, this Jewish homeland, they don't seem to have or show any black or, Jews of color, which is fascinating because everybody we're reading about, this is going on in Africa and the Middle East, not a traditionally pale place.
We know what that's about. Do we even have to get into that right now?
I think we do. You have to remember not everybody has your experiences. So you can look at it through that lens. But for people who are constantly used to only seeing pale faces and consider dark faces a minority, even though on the planet most people are melanated. So I think it is worth saying. Like, I will agree, me and you know what's going on because we've grown up in a very color centric society. But for people who just assume that, whiteness or paleness is just the norm for everywhere around the world, it wouldn't faze them. But for me, it's very interesting that this bastion, this stronghold that the U.S. refuses to ever criticize, is also could be described as all white.
Yeah. No. I can see that point, and maybe it is important to say something. So excuse my negligence on that. It just gets exhausting.
You're excused. It does get exhausting. I really, oh my goodness, like sometimes get seriously depressed about it and have to make myself stop thinking about it.
Interesting. I don't think I ever get depressed. It just gets exhausting because it's just like, golly, like every step you make, every move you make, that's our transition to Puff in a second. But it's just like I don't want to think about. And you know what? I've recognized this. I think I more than most have. I think I brought this up before. Have a privilege as a black man because light skinned. I've realized when I go into spaces, I don't get treated how some of my peers might be treated.
Yeah.
But I do recognize that there's still a lot of levels of bullshit. So
is there ever?
Yeah. But anyway, they're not showing them. I haven't really like kept up with it as far as like a daily news cycle. I just happen to be on Twitter. I refuse to fucking call it X. And that rainwater thing just like stuck with me because I was just like, that is so wild. And then
that's some cold. That pimpin's ice cold.
Yeah, and that made me go.
You never heard a pimp tell a bitch you can't collect raindrops while you on the corner. Yeah, a pimp will let a bitch drink. It's like, damn, like they won't let them live. That's the thing. It's like there's no good. It communicates a lack of good faith.
Well, and I guess I connected with that particular story because it reminded me of, in a lot of ways, the civil rights movement, where it's just like all these black people in the United States want to just be responsible for their own destinies and
live. It's called living. They just want to live.
At every turn, somebody's trying to make it harder.
Yeah, we just want our Cool Ranch freedoms like everybody else. Yeah. Like that's it. So that's the thing too. Like if you are a person who is like legally white, and you want to know, like, I mean, everyone's coming at me. What can I do? On an interpersonal level, just treat black people like you would white people. Like we're all the same people. Like what you consider white people came from black people. We all came from black people. There's no, we're all we're all rowing the same boat.
And it's so interesting, like media in the internet culture. Well, I don't want to say will have you think that things are worse than they are, because things I think have always been bad. Those outlets have just allowed us to see it more and understand that this is taking place a lot more frequently, because I often see on the internet.
It holds a mirror up to society for sure.
Yeah, but on a daily personal level, like when I walk outside and I check the temperature, I feel like I run into a lot of people where I feel like, oh, these are, decent people, whether they're white or black. So it's just.
Or even some kind of halvesies.
Halvesies? Like,
yeah. I mean, I think America can at least conditions us to think in that binary, but when you start looking at the world at large, people don't fall comfortably into binaries. We're finding that out with gender. And I think when it comes to what we're calling race, which is a very imprecise, unscientific term, when you have these different populations, I'll say, like, you see the same kind of stuff just pop up.
That reminds me. I was somewhere.
That's where you always are.
I was at work for my
Okay.
job where I have to act like a patient to help train medical professionals, and one of the questions was, "What is your race?" And what is your race ethnicity? And I was, however they worded it, particularly that particular time, I was like, well, what are my options? And so he said, he was like, well, there's black, or she said black. And I was just like, black's a race? I didn't know that. I just, like, to me, that's a color. So,
Well, that's all race is. It's just very codified colorism. So,
because to me,
I mean,
race is like, I guess, along the lines of species. Like, there's the human race, and then
once
there's
again, I point out like the reason why you can keep talking about it in circles is because it's not based in any sort of fact. So it's a pseudoscience. Like, it's not. Like it really isn't anything. It was just it's a vestige of eugenics, which has been debunked as a fake science. So the fact that we still use it is part of the problem. Like,
yes,
this shouldn't be an identifier. I like it a lot when they put prefer not to say. And that was the thing too, because when I learned that, like, in a lot of places, like in most of the world, like, we wouldn't be considered black. Like, we consider ourselves black because that's what it says on our birth certificates. And we're legally black by the United States standards because they use a 1-drop rule, which is also very imprecise. Like, what does that mean?
So you have one,
but
if you have 1 drop of
yes, it means if you have 1 drop of African blood, but as we've established, everybody does. That's where we've all come from. You go far back enough.
Oh, man.
I quoted this on the other podcast. Paul Mooney, he's a comedian, and he's passed on, very controversial, but he has said, a white man loves to look at his family tree, but he don't want to shake it because a nigga fall out. And I think that's, true. But before we can go on, but like, yeah, that's just a quick primer on race. And it's actual non-existence. Like, people are different colors, but we don't have to sort people by color. That's weird, because whenever you have any kind of genetic diversity in a population, you're going to have different gene expressions, and that means different phenotypes, different colors, nose shapes, hair color, hair texture. And the variety is beautiful and wonderful. So I think, like, trying to say, like, well, you're this type of person because you look like this, it's like, chill out.
Well, the last point I'll make on that, and then we can move on, is everything to me relates back to people not wanting to do the work. And what I mean by that is, because what you just said,
I'm going to disagree with you right there.
What do you mean?
That I think a lot of these problems stem from people not wanting to do the work, like that what you just said. But I wasn't stopping you. I was saying I agree with you.
Oh, I thought you said you were gonna disagree with me. I was just like,
no. No,
what is there to disagree? All right.
No,
well, yeah.
I strong agree.
Well, because in the, like you said, this is kind of a pseudoscience when we get into the whole race thing, and so people not taking the time to go understand or even be put in positions where they're being taught that this is kind of not the way we should do things. We kind of just accept what is given, creates a problem. And we've seen that with the race thing. We see that with the whole reason we're doing this podcast. We see that. So it just continues to, I don't know, I guess shake my faith in humanity, because people kind of just want it easily handed to them. And I'm constantly reminded every fucking day that you actually are going to have to work a little bit harder than you thought you were going to have to work to make the world a better place, and to get the results that you want. I was watching Jeannie Buss, who is the owner of the Los Angeles Lakers, which is a basketball team in the United States. And she had got asked a question like, when do you get to take a break or whatever? And she was like, really, I don't. Like, you always have to be on. My phone is constantly ringing, or I'm always doing a text. And that to relate that to this, it just makes me think like that's kind of how you have to be when it comes to learning and knowledge. Like you always kind of have to be on.
That's not healthy.
I mean, it's not, but
I mean, I wouldn't recommend that. But I would say to your point about, maybe losing your faith in humanity. That's kind of how I felt when I heard the Diddy story. Because I was like, the fact that it didn't surprise me, I was like, well, damn.
Oh, it didn't surprise me either.
Yeah, because I was like, that tracks. And it's like, God damn it. Like, why does this, how do we stop it? Like, I would like to stop domestic abuse. I really would like to stop all the abuses. I think that's why I'm so passionate about getting the word out about the Bible and what it actually is as opposed to what it's
Did he
branded
ask that
as.
shit quick? You see, he already settled, right?
Yeah.
I was like,
and I think
that is the fastest I've ever seen that.
So I was on a podcast last night and I got not into it because the whole point of the show is to debate stuff. So one of the other guests on the show, he was saying it looked suspect because it was 4 days from the statute of limitations for her ever being able to do something about it. And I was like, well, I'm like, that to me, that makes sense. Like, to me, it doesn't make her look less credible. It's just like, he's like, why didn't she say something earlier? It's like, well, there's no good time to ever do this stuff. That's the thing. Like, no matter when you do it, there's always some kind of scrutiny. I'm like, does it make it a safer world when we ask those questions for people to come forward, or are we making it harder for them?
That's like saying, whenever you have a deadline for like, I don't know, like for insurance or something, like, like insurance, you usually get like a 31-day period when you go to a new job. And that's like saying, why did you wait to the 29th day or some shit like that? It's just like, I mean, you did, like, you might have been on the fence. Do I want this insurance? Do I not want this insurance? Do I want to test, or do I want to take this to trial? Do I not want to take, like, it's just, that's just what it is. Now,
do you think there should be a statute of limitations for sex crimes? Like, obviously there should be statutes of limitations, but on certain
what is
crimes,
what is the current timeline? Do you know?
I don't know. I think it might be 20 years. I don't know though, because it might be different from state to state too. So, because it would be filed with the state, so it would be different from state to state. But one of the things that's interesting to me is that one of the organizations that's lobbying super hard to make sure that there is still a statute of limitations for sex crimes. I'm actually going to see if you can guess. Do you think you could guess the organization that's fighting really hard to keep statute of limitations for sex crimes?
Before I answer that, to answer my own question, because I just Googled it. It does vary from state to state. It looks like, because the first state that popped up is our state, and so ours is 5 years for statutory rape, and
that's not a long time.
It says 7 years from the date of the incident for.
Okay, so anywhere from 5 to 7 years. So, like, do you think, like, which organization do you think is fighting super hard to keep these statutes?
It's an organization and not a party.
Yes. When I say it, you're going to be like,
Planned Parenthood? I don't know.
What? Why would they want?
I don't know. You asked me a question. That was the first person.
Sorry. I'm sorry. The Catholic Church.
They're fighting for statute of limitations.
Yes, because if there is no statute of limitations, they're going to get way more lawsuits against them.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So they want to me, the statutes really protect abusers in these situations, especially given the nature of sex crimes. The thing I wanted to make clear, whenever you're ready, that's the right time to do it. So to tell somebody like you should have done it back when, I would have cared about it, I don't want to hear that noise. Like, for people who've been through this, they need to, whenever they feel like it's time to do it, that's the time to do it. And it makes it a safer world when you say it, because your silence will not save you.
And I was going to agree with you before, because when I just in my head thought about it from a more petty level, there's no get back, or there's no like what did they say? There's no due date on the get back or some shit like that. But basically,
yeah,
like, you know, if you did something in the past, like, I think you should have to answer for that, no matter. So yeah, I don't think we should have statute of limitations actually for any crime, I guess.
Well, I'm going to say specifically for sex crime. I think for some crimes, because it can overload the justice system, like if you can go back to anything, and like it does, there is some logic around that. But given the nature of sex crimes and the fact that making it more difficult to report these people makes our world less safe, because the other thing it does is it sends out a warning. Because now it's like, okay, young women who may not have heard this before have now heard it. And now you're hearing this over and over again. So you won't be going in situations like, oh, I met this pop star and he's like, seems really into me. Like, no problems there. Or the fact that this much older man is interested in this very young girl. Because to me, Cass, they got involved when she was like 19. That's very young. And he was 37. Like,
you know what's even more weird to me is the fact that these people's unhealthy relationship with fucking people we like. Like, I like Diddy. He's funny, you know. I never really liked him. I do think he has a lot of fuck nigga tendencies.
I like some of the music he produced.
From like just what I've seen as far as personality, like, I like him. He can come off as like an asshole and a whole bunch of other shit. But I generally like Diddy. Now, with that being said, I think it's weird when people be like, well, why'd you wait this long? And like, because to me, that just signals like, it kind of is like what you just said. Like, oh, well, you should have said something when I cared about it. Like, no, fuck that. Like, I don't know. I don't get these. It makes it makes people feel like they should never say anything, which just continues to perpetuate abuse cycles. And then two, like, we worship these fucking people. Like, Diddy don't even fucking know you. Like, I saw some of the one of the things was funny though. The comments do be funny. Sometimes
they do. Niggas are funny and mean.
Because somebody said her new boyfriend or something is definitely telling her to do this, and I don't know. I found that funny.
Her new boyfriend's telling her to do what?
To file against Diddy. This is before they settled.
To file it. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I missed
like he's putting boyfriend. Her new man is putting her up to this so they can get money from Puff.
Oh. And
no, I didn't. Yeah, but I don't know. I just thought that was funny.
And because that's the thing. Like, if he didn't feel like because that's the other thing too. He's getting older now, and so I think he might actually want to make amends to her. I wonder. Like, I don't know how many people have ever thought like that was the thing where it was just like, because honestly, what probably happened, because I think this is how it. You know, at least in my case, like, usually you have to cut off your abuser as much as you can. So I can't imagine they've had like a talking relationship. So yeah, because the statute's about to run out. Who know? I honestly, it's none of. I don't really care about that point. I think what matters is we support people who come out and tell their truth. For people who are like, well, these bitches be lying. It's usually really obvious when people lie about this stuff. People get caught up real quick because real crimes that really happen, they defend themselves because they have the power of truth. Like, when people are lying, like that Jussie Smollett shit, when people lie about being abused, it unravels pretty quickly because, like I said, most people don't even understand abuse cycles and how it goes for real. So usually there's a tip off like, oh, you making this shit up, because that don't make no sense.
The Jussie Smollett,
like that one chick who pretended to see like a kid on the side of the road because she wanted to say she was abducted or whatever.
I have no idea.
This was a couple months ago. It turns out there was this woman who basically wanted to run off with her boyfriend for a while, but she was in a real religious environment. So she lied and say she saw a child getting trafficked, and then she was kidnapped because she said she saw the, abducted child or whatever. It just ended up being like, it's like, girl, that's not, we know you're lying, because that's how the taken version of human trafficking works. That's not how real human trafficking works. So yeah, that's usually how you can figure out people are lying, because they just take their Law and Order ass version of crime and try to make it apply to their life, and it's like, no, that's bullshit. But when shit's real, it has a way of it rings a bell. Okay. But speaking of abuse cycles, you ready to get into the new revised standard version of 1 Samuel 4?
Yes, your favorite type of abuse.
Yeah. Ishbal assassinated. When Saul's son Ishbal heard that Abner had died at Hebron, his courage failed, and all Israel was dismayed. Saul had 2 captains of raiding bands, and the name of one was Baanah, and the name of the other was Rechab. They were sons of Rimmon, a Benjaminite from Beeroth, for Beeroth is considered to belong to Benjamin. Now the people of Beeroth have fled to Gideam and are there as resident aliens to this day. Saul's son Jonathan had a son who was crippled in his feet. He was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel. His nurse picked him up and fled, and in her haste to flee, it happened that he fell and became lame. His name was Mephibosheth. Now the sons of Rimmon and the Beerite, Rechab and Baanah, set out, and about the heat of the day they came to the house of Ishbal while he was taking his noonday rest. They came inside the house as though to take wheat, and they stuck him in the stomach. Then Rechab and his brother Bahan escaped. Now they had come into the house while he was lying on his couch in his bedchamber. They attacked him, killed him, and beheaded him. Then they took his head and traveled by way of Arabah all night long. They brought the head of Ishbal to David at Hebron and said to the king, "Here is the head of Ishbal, son of Saul, your enemy, who sought your life. The Lord has avenged my lord, the king, this day on Saul and his offspring." David answered Rechab and his brother Baanah, the sons of Rimmon the Betherite, "As the Lord lives, who has redeemed my life out of every adversity, when the one who told me, 'See, Saul is dead,' thought he was bringing good news, I seized him and killed him at Ziklag. This was the reward I gave him for his news. How much more then when wicked men have killed a righteous man on his bed in his own house? And now I shall not require his blood at your hand and destroy you from the earth." So David commanded the young men, and they killed them. They cut off their hands, feet, and hung their bodies beside the pool at Hebron. But the head of Ishbal they took and buried in the tomb of Abner at Hebron.
Thanks be to God. Well, all right. So, wow.
The stabby.
You know what this story reminded me of as I was reading?
Diddy.
No, what? No. This reminded me of the Sopranos episode where those 2 guys tried to kill Chris. You remember that episode?
I haven't seen Sopranos.
Okay, well, it's an episode where these 2 guys are kind of, they think they can move up in the ranks by killing Chris.
Were these the 2 dumb ones?
Yeah.
Okay, I remember that because yeah.
They think they can move up in the ranks by killing Chris and like kind of get in better with Well, they were trying to get cool with Tony, but he wasn't fucking with them. So
because they were stupid.
Yeah, so they kind of did that and then tried to.
Because they thought Chris and Tony were beefing, so they're like, okay, he'll be happy with us if we kill him.
Yeah, and then.
But it's like, dude, that's my nephew. Be for real.
And so I don't know. That kind of just made me think of that because I mean, they did this. They killed Ishbal, and then they went to David, and David was like, "What the fuck?" Basically, he wasn't feeling that, and so he ends up killing them. Apparently, according to, well, do you want to give your analysis before I get into the message of this?
I was just gonna say David's real funny acting because he acts like he's the only one who can kill people.
Oh,
Like, you know,
you're gonna love the message then.
Okay, cool. And it was super weird to me. They just threw in there that one guy, Mephibosheth, and like they just threw in there that he got his feet fucked up when he was little because his nurse was clumsy. I don't know what that had to do with the story. That fell out of place.
They're setting him up for a later story arc. He's the B story.
Can I say it was cumbersome?
Yeah, I mean you can say
Okay.
whatever you want.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, go ahead with who's this giving us a breakdown?
Bard.
Okay, thank you, Bard.
According to Bard, the message of the story is David's response to Ishbosheth's assassination demonstrates his commitment to justice and his refusal to tolerate violence and treachery, even in the pursuit of power. He understands that true leadership requires integrity and compassion, and he is determined to rule Israel in a way that honors God and brings peace to the land.
So this weekend I actually got into a conversation with a young man who's like, you know, he's super into the Bible. So I told him, I'm like, yeah, I'm reading the Bible too, but I'm like, I'm not as impressed. And I was just saying, like, you know, because he's actually reading Samuel right now too. And so I was like, so what did David do other than kill people? Because they talk about what a faithful, you know, leader David was to the Lord. But it's like, what did he do other than kill people? Like, kill more people than Saul. And it's there, unless you just have the, you know, like, hey, this is the lesson, y'all. You ain't even got to think about it. It's like, no, I thought about it. And this is actually terrible. Like, this is just a continuation of the human impulse to murder people and then be like, God told me to.
What kind of God, man? This is a question that I keep coming back to.
And also, it seems like, make God do his own killing. It seems like God is perfectly capable of killing whoever he wants to, whenever he wants to. So why does he need your grubby little unwashed human hands doing it for him? Unless you just like killing.
Yeah, I don't understand. I mean, we brought it up before, though. Like, he should, one, be able to do it. But also, if you're a powerful being, you don't even need to do any of this. Like, you can literally snap your fingers and make whatever happen. So it just, I don't know.
It's almost as if he doesn't exist.
But again, people don't like to think. So
I mean, people don't like to think in a way that makes them less important or wrong.
I've noticed that a lot more as well. It's an ego thing.
Yeah, we got them. All right. So, okay, so we're getting we're getting into kind of like why we're in this sticky situation, and because that's the problem with people taking this literally and seriously. Because that was the thing too, because he was saying like that part where Saul goes to the medium to bring up Samuel's ghost, and he was like, oh, and that shows ghosts are real. I was like, or somebody just wrote that down like every other ghost story. Like, and here's another point, and this is how I know ghosts aren't real, because if ghosts were real, the ghosts of former slaves would be haunting all these white people.
When I went to acting class this weekend, I met a gentleman who does a supernatural podcast. He swears that shit's real. Good guy too. I really liked his energy. Shout out him because he's been doing podcasting for 14 years.
It makes for a funner world if there's this like supernatural underworld. But since people don't even understand the natural world, what makes you think you could understand a supernatural world?
I guess I don't know what to call myself, but I often find like these people's amazement with like aliens and ghosts and supernatural shit, I don't much care. I don't
If it were
much.
real, I would totally care. But since
Even
it's
if it
just
was
stuff
real,
people
like,
made
is it
up,
impacting me directly?
I mean, that's the thing. You wouldn't know unless you studied or looked into it. But since it's just some stuff people made up, it's not worth looking into.
Okay, I'll give you that, because it could be one of those things like, I don't know, like gravity, where it's there, but we don't really acknowledge it, but we know it has a presence. So yeah,
But we can study. But that's the thing with gravity. We can study it and learn about it and how it affects like time and how our mass affect gravity. Like all of that stuff is really fascinating and interesting to learn. Like the stuff with ghosts, like that's just something because it's just an extension of our fear of death because we want to believe we can be a ghost and live on forever after we die. But we don't. You just die. It's fine.
I think those type of narratives combined with this is where I get disappointed, is where it's harmful
With humanity.
Yeah, because it's harmful because it allows people to think that they have more time than they do.
Yeah.
And it allows people to waste that time.
Yeah.
And put shit off. And no,
I don't know.
I think it's way more empowering to wake up every day and be like, you know what? This might be the last day. This might be the only time I ever get. And I should take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And given recent events with me, that's really made me be like, you know what? Gonna take advantage of all these moments, you know.
Hell yeah. Yeah, hell yeah. I'm the captain of my soul. All right, you want to tackle Samuel 5?
Yes. David anointed king of all Israel. Then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, look, we are your bone and flesh. For some time, while Saul was king over us, it was you who led us out Israel and brought it in. The Lord said to you, it is you who shall be shepherd of my people, Israel. You who shall be ruler over Israel. So all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. At Hebron he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and at Jerusalem he reigned over all Israel and Judah 33 years. Jerusalem made capital of the United Kingdom. That's interesting. The king and his men marched to Jerusalem against the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, who said to David, you will not come in here. Even the blind and lame will turn you back, thinking David cannot come in here. Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, which is now the city of David. David had said on that day, whoever would strike down the Jebusites, let him get up the water shaft to attack the lame and the blind, those who David hates. Therefore, it is said, the blind and the lame shall not come into the house. David occupied the stronghold and named it the city of David. David built the city all around from the Milo inward, and David became greater and greater, for the Lord, the God of hosts, was with him. King Hiram of Tyre sent message to David, along with cedar trees and carpenters and masons who built David a house. David then perceived that the Lord had established him king over Israel, and that he had exalted his kingdom for the sake of his people is Israel and Jerusalem. After he came from Hebron, David took more concubines and wives, and more sons and daughters were born to David. These are the names of those who were born to him in Jerusalem: Shammua, Shobab, Nathan, Solomon, Ibhar, Elishua, Nepeg, Jabhia, Elishama, Eliada, and Eliphelet. Philistine attack repulsed. When the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king over Israel, all the Philistines went up in search of David, but David heard about it and went down to the stronghold. Now the Philistines had come and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. David inquired of the Lord, shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you give them into my hand? The Lord said to David, go up, for I will certainly give the Philistines into your hand. So David came to Balaam Perazim, Baal Perazim, and David defeated them there. He said, "The Lord has burst forth against my enemies before me like a bursting flood. Therefore, that place is called Baal Perazim." The Philistines abandoned their idols there, and David and his men carried them away. Once again, the Philistines came up and were spread out in the valley of Rephaim. When David inquired of the Lord, he said, "You shall not go up. Go around to their rear and come up upon them opposite the balsam trees. When you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the balsam trees, then be on the alert, for then the Lord had gone out before you to strike down the army of the Philistines." David did just as the Lord had commanded him, and he struck down the Philistines from Geba all the way to Gezer. Thanks be.
Okay, thanks be to God. Wow. So, okay, so I had some time to think. So Ishbaal was the king of Israel, and he was just randomly, according to this narrative, he was just randomly killed by the captains of Saul's former raiding bands after, because keep in mind, like, they heard Abner had died. So their reaction was like, well, let's get in good with David and bring him the head of the king of Israel. And then, to me, what's more likely scenario, because to me, this is just all propaganda. Like, none of this is real. For real. Like, if David was a real person, I don't think the God of the universe was telling him to kill people or telling him the best ways to kill people. I think that's just part of the narrative. But I think what's more likely scenario, if this is any way grounded in fact, is that David had those captains, like Abner's captains, kill Ishbaal to consolidate the kingdoms, and then killed the assassins, because that's what you do.
I feel like he's pulled this move a couple times, actually.
I think a lot of people throughout history have pulled this move. Like, it's a pretty well-known power grab. Like, let me kill this guy and take his stuff, and then kill the people who helped me do it.
Yeah.
So, but the problem is there are millions of people in this world who believe that the God of the universe was talking to this unwashed polygamist murderer, and that, Jerusalem is still the city of David, and now everybody's fighting over the scraps. So, because I think people desperately, I don't know, like, it's just so obviously bad that because it just so happens David's like, hey, shall I go up against the Philistines? And God was like, yeah, you should totally go up against the Philistines. It's like, hey, that's great. That's what I want to do. It's like, what? Like, okay.
You know what I really, you explaining that made me think of, you know what I really like about The Last Jedi, the new Star Wars, the I guess the sequels to the originals, whatever the new trilogy is. One of the things when he was like, yo, you should join me, you should let go of the past. And that was kind of like, I guess, a metaphor also for us to let go of the old Star Wars and kind of like, let's explore new avenues. And I feel like that when it comes to this material. I think that, because
Star Wars was always a veiled metaphor for our own society.
Are you being for real?
Yes. Like the Jedi were the priest class, and the Empire is, all the empires that Earth, that humans have created. Like, yeah, it was a.
Oh, interesting. Fun fact about the Jedi, because people often think that the Jedi can't have kids. That is actually not true. The Jedi just cannot marry or actually, they can't marry and fall in love. They can still fuck and have kids.
Okay, there you go. That's always how you want to do things. But that's true of even the priest class, in the Catholic Church. Like, that was newer thing where you couldn't have kids. Like, at first you could totally have kids, and then they were like, hey, we're losing too much money. So they were like, nah, you can't have kids. It's like, wait, God, can we have kids? Oh, nope, just hearing in from God, can't have kids.
I brought that up to say that I think that a lot of the problems that we fall into with the modern world we live in is that we are unwilling to let go of some past things. And because of that, it causes a rift in our society where I think some things are definitely good to have structure and provide value, but I think we should always be looking forward on how do we improve upon the design of things. And I don't think that happens often. I think we get so ramped up in, is the word bureaucracy? I don't know. We get so caught up in just holding on to old things that it hinders us from moving forward.
It does.
Now,
it's called being conservative. That's why I say like just conservatism is just inherently bad because it's a denial of the need for change.
Well, there is a I don't want to say study. There is another form of thought out there that if we change too quickly,
sure,
it can have a negative effect.
Of course, it can be destabilizing. It doesn't mean like change everything all the time. Like I think, red lights should still be red. It's just but the things that aren't serving us should be changed.
Yeah.
And there's no point in being like, but what if God sends the locusts? It's like, just chill out. Like God ain't thinking about you for real.
I'm gonna be very interested for like generation, I guess Gen Z, and then the whatever the generation is after them, to see how they, when the world is placed in their hands, and how they, do with it when it comes to society, when it comes to
I have to believe they're going to do a better job. But
for one, I think, I think they will in some ways, and I think in other ways, maybe not.
Of course, that's how things always are. Like, it is hard to know what that balance is of what to keep and what to throw away. There's just always, that's just life though. You do your best. What can you do?
Yeah.
All right. 2 Samuel 6.
Wait, whoa. Wait, you never read that? Did we not already read 2 Samuel? Am I tripping?
Yeah, no, you just did 5.
Oh, okay.
Yes, you are in fact tripping.
No, you just read something. Because I was responding to what you just said.
We were having a conversation. Like you just read 1 Samuel 5, and we were responding to that. And now it's my turn to read 1 Samuel 6. Once I start, you'll see. It'll feel new. Trust me.
I don't know.
I'm a great producer. Whatever. I'm doing great. Like, just trust me on this one. Okay. 2 Samuel 6. David again gathered all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. David and all the people with him set out and went from Baal Judah to bring up from there the ark of God, which is called by the name of the Lord of hosts, who is enthroned on the cherubim. They carried the ark of God on a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, were driving the new cart with the ark of God, and Ahio went in front of the ark. David and all the house of Israel were dancing before the Lord with all their might, with songs and lyres and harps and tambourines and castanets and cymbals. When they came to the threshing floor of Nacon, Uzzah reached out his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it. The anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God struck him there because he reached out his hand to the ark, and he died there beside the ark of God. David was angry because the Lord had burst forth with an outburst upon Uzzah. So that place is called Perez Uzzah to this day. David was afraid of the Lord that day, and he said, "How can the ark of the Lord come into my care?" So David was unwilling to take the ark of the Lord into his care in the city of David. Instead, David took it to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. The ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household. It was told King David, "The Lord has blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all that belongs to him because the ark of God." So David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing. And when those who bore the ark of the Lord had gone 6 paces, he sacrificed an ox and a fatling. David danced before the Lord with all his might. David was girded with a lined ephod. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouting and with the sound of the trumpet. As the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, Michal's daughter of Saul looked out the window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord. She despised him in her heart. They brought in the ark of the Lord and set it in its place inside the tent that David had pitched for it, and David offered burnt offerings and offerings of well-being before the Lord. When David had finished offering the burnt offerings and the offerings of well-being, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts and distributed food among the people and the whole multitude of Israel, both men and women, to eat a cake of bread, a portion of meat, a cake of raisins. Then all the people went back to their homes. David returned to bless his household, but Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, "How the king of Israel honored himself today, uncovering himself today before the eyes of his servants' maids, as any vulgar fellow might shamelessly uncover himself." David said to Michal, "It was before the Lord who chose me in place of your father and all his household to appoint me as prince over Israel, the people of the Lord, that I have danced before the Lord. I will make myself yet more comfortable than this, and I will be abased in my own eyes. But by the maids of whom you have spoken, by them I shall be held in honor." And Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child to the day of her death. Woo, bitch. Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God. So
damn, David was talking his shit.
Well, I found it interesting that David got pissed off at God.
That was interesting. You know what, though? Because once again, I'm reading this through the lens of an adult who understands like political propaganda. So I think what happened is, because it sounds like they were partying, right? Like they had the castanets, they're singing and dancing, probably drinking. That's being left out of it, but that's usually a part of this. A lot of times you get drunk, you want to dance and party. Maybe not. But it sounds like what more than likely happened is David killed this dude and then blamed it on the Lord. Because if you're seeing things from my lens, which is the Lord is just David's imaginary friend, who just kind of co-signs whatever he wants to do, you can also just blame stuff on him. It's just like that evil spirit that the Lord sent on Saul and, just conveniently lined everything up for David. It's giving Diddy, where it's like, I don't actually ever really get my hands dirty. I just let my goons do everything or whatever. And then blame it on somebody else. And he didn't have to, and once again, we're kind of glazing over the part where he's taking a bunch of wives and concubines too. It's kind of weird because the people who follow this book now are very anti having sex with other people, but David seemed to be super into it and the Lord was super cool with him.
Yeah, I found a lot of...
Oh, and one more thing. I'm sorry, because that was what the Elijah Muhammad, he always used to cite David whenever he was being a shitty leader. And it's like, well, God still chose him. It's like, bitch, y'all are running the same play. You killing people to consolidate power and fucking all the hoes.
I found a lot of contradictions in this book, especially as we've read more of it and gone through it and talked about the homoeroticism that falls in line with a lot of it, first of all. And then the excuses that people make in the modern era to justify some of their actions is based upon this. It's just horrendous, to say the least. I don't agree with it. I mean, I feel like at this point it's kind of a broken record of opinion that I'm giving, but nonetheless, for the new listeners or people who may be coming in, maybe this helps.
Yeah. I agree. It's definitely I want to make it very clear that I'm not like a person who thinks like we should burn all the Bibles or anything like that. I think the Bible is a very important document and it's obviously affected our world in a lot of ways. I think that viewing it as a magic document from God is a problem. And what's so interesting is that the people who are biblical literalists, they're usually also very anti-Catholic. And what's funny to me is like we wouldn't have any of this if it weren't for the Catholic Church. So if you think like the Catholic Church is messed up, like you're just like an off-brand version of the Catholic Church. You should know that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But this is what I was trying to get to, and maybe I didn't elaborate the point earlier about Jeannie Buss saying she can't really take a day off. I don't think we necessarily need to. I think you should take time for yourself, but you should also know that you have to continue to educate yourself. You have to continue to work on your body, work on your mind. These are things that are important. And the moment you start to slack too much and get too comfortable, that's when
life comes for you. I agree. Learning should be we should all be lifelong students, because the moment you think you've got it all figured out, that's when you messed up.
What do you think? Because so living in real life, I've come across, because you've brought this up before, you don't understand how people don't read, or who. What do you think is a way to reach people who don't normally go out and seek the information in ways of reading, research, etc.? For example, the person who made the app Duolingo, which teaches you new languages, he said one of the things that he realized was, or that they realized, I'm trying to get my pronoun game right. I'm not sure if he identifies as he, but I'm trying to keep it gender neutral. One of the things that they realized is that the best way to click with people is to gamify learning. Mm-hmm. So Duolingo, they realized that once you start a streak and we send you reminders, hey, your streak is about to end, a lot of people are more likely to go be like, oh, I don't want to lose my streak. And so they continue to learn, and they've done it in a way that's
okay. I think I understand what you're asking. So you're asking, how do you get across to people who aren't necessarily as curious as we are and want to look this stuff up and find out for themselves? I think the best way is by asking people questions. I think there should be because that is almost a type of game, using the Socratic method, because people trust the stuff that it's like Inception, the stuff that they come up with. They don't want to be told they're wrong. They want to be they want to discover, give them the opportunity to discover it instead of trying to push it on them. So that would be my suggestion, is ask questions, because a lot of times when people are like that, these are questions they've never asked themselves. And that's why a lot of times people get frustrated with children. I love children because I love a new perspective. They have fresh eyes on everything. And so since I'm not afraid to have my viewpoints challenged, I love that. But for people, there are people who hate children. And I think they're the same type of people who don't like answering questions. They'll be when they're but why? And it's oh my goodness, or they're ashamed of saying, I don't know. I'm never afraid to say, I don't know, because I know I'm never going to know everything. Oh, we're so late. I'm just now reading our comments from YouTube from when we did God Awful Movies. But there were people in the comments who were trying to drag you for not knowing what masochist meant. But I'm most people, nobody knows. Oh, yeah. I fired back on your behalf. Super late, 3 months later.
But I don't need. See, one thing that I've learned is for those who may have transferred over to listen to us, I'm not here to say that I know everything. See, I think that's where people get fucked up, where they claim that they know everything and they act as if. I'm going to go comment on that shit. But I'm perfectly comfortable just being yeah, I don't know. I think it's very arrogant to go into life and be like, man, you never You never seen that, or you don't know what that means? Like,
yeah, at one point
there was a time where you didn't fucking know, buddy.
Yeah, there was a time. Yeah, so no one. I put in the comments. Nobody knows all the words, and asking is how we learn. So, and to me, it's very similar to that thing of like asking people like why they waited so long to come forward with their story. It's like you're not making it a safe environment for people to come out, and then whenever you're like, you didn't know that, you're not making a safe environment for people to ask questions and learn. So that's what I want. I want an environment that has less abuse and is safe to ask questions. And for me, that was because I consider us like we're kind of like Sunday school dropouts. You know what I mean? Like we just kind of like decided to piece out of this whole thing. But part of what I didn't like about it is that questions aren't encouraged. They say they are, but they're not for real.
Well, I have pushback on that.
Okay.
What you said. Because I have a friend who doesn't like being questioned. And this particular individual, he feels like when you're asking too many questions to him, why the fuck do you want to know? And me and him have gone back and forth with this.
Well, no, I'm just saying you're talking about like for like people who don't want to read, like how to get them.
No. Yeah, right. But I think another perspective of that is when you do start asking people questions, because I agree with you totally. I think I think there's a quote out there about the most personal thing you can do is ask somebody a question, because then it makes them feel like they're important.
Yeah, because they are. My whole thing is like I'm not even doing it to be manipulative. People are important. Like we need each other. But I mean, I just wanted to clarify. But also, I wanted to because I do have to get started today. Yeah, I had a hard stop time at 8:30 so that I won't be late for work.
All right. Well, be curious, not judgmental. I think that is what we got.
Oh, real quick.
Today.
Next time on Bible Breakdown, God does a covenant with David. There's some David wars. That's pretty predictable. And then David's kindness to Mephibosheth.
Right, well, I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, and your body belongs to you. So have some fun with it.
biblebreakdownpodcast@gmail.com. See you next time. Peace.